The mansion on Rosewood Hill was a palace of glass and marble. Adrian Williams, heir to the Williams fortune, lived under the strict watch of his mother, Margaret, a woman known for her icy discipline. The staff moved about in hushed tones, terrified of her sharp tongue. Among them was Amara, the maid who spoke little and blended into the background like furniture. Amara's silence wasn't from fear. It was her nature, patient, deliberate, watchful. Her work was flawless. Every glass sparkled. Every surface gleamed. Yet her silence unnerved Margaret. A maid with no complaints, no gossip, no ambitions seemed unnatural. Worse, Adrian often stole glances at her, curious about the mystery she embodied. Margaret despised it. In her world, maids were replaceable tools, not people who should inspire interest. And on the afternoon of the grand banquet, her disdain boiled over. She caught Adrian speaking kindly to Amara, asking if she needed help. Margaret's fury erupted. She dragged Amara down from the ladder where she was cleaning the chandelier and tore at her uniform, ripping fabric in front of the shocked staff. "You are nothing but a servant," she spat. The room froze. The maid stood trembling, humiliated. Margaret expected Adrian to side with her. Instead, his eyes darkened. His voice, calm but sharp as glass, cut through the silence. "Mother, what have you done?" The entire house went still. Margaret had never seen her son look at her with such coldness. For years, Adrian had been the obedient heir, never questioning her authority. But now, standing before the ripped uniform of a trembling maid, he no longer looked like her boy. He looked like a man drawing a line. "Apologize to her," Adrian said quietly. Margaret's lips curled. "Apologize? To a maid?" She laughed bitterly, but the sound carried no power against the silence of the staff, all of whom were watching. Adrian stepped closer to Amara, who was clutching the torn cloth against herself, her face burning with humiliation. He removed his suit jacket and gently placed it around her shoulders. The gesture sent a murmur through the staff. "This house," Adrian said, his voice steady, "will not be a place where dignity is torn apart." Margaret's face paled. "You would shame me for her? For a servant?" Adrian met her gaze, without blinking. "I would shame myself if I stayed silent." For the first time in years, Margaret had no words. The weight of his defiance pressed against her pride like a blade. And in that moment, Amara's secret, the one she had carried in silence for so long, began to tremble on the edge of revelation. The incident spread like wildfire through the household. The cooks whispered in the kitchen, the gardeners gossiped by the hedges, and the butlers exchanged furtive glances in the hallways. Never before had anyone seen Adrian stand against his mother. Amara tried to return to her duties as if nothing had happened, but whispers followed her every step. She hated the attention. Her past had taught her to stay invisible. Yet now, her silence only deepened the curiosity. "Why would the young master protect her?" one maid asked. "She must be hiding something," another muttered. Margaret, humiliated by the murmurs, summoned Amara that evening. Alone in her ornate chamber, she looked down at the maid with venom. "You think his kindness will save you? Girls like you are dangerous. You worm your way into places you don't belong. But hear me clearly, if you ever imagine yourself equal to this family, I will destroy you." Amara bowed her head. She said nothing, but when she left the room, Margaret felt unsettled. There was no fear in the girl's silence, only patience, as if Amara knew something Margaret didn't. The banquet arrived. The mansion glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and clinking glasses. Powerful politicians and wealthy businessmen filled the hall. Margaret wore her jewels proudly, determined to bury the humiliation of the previous day. Amara moved among the guests quietly, her uniform repaired, her presence unnoticed, until a guest spilled wine on her dress. She bent to clean it, but the man, a wealthy investor named Mr. Harrington, sneered. "Is this the best the Williams family can afford? A mute girl who doesn't even look like she belongs here?" Margaret smirked, seizing the moment. Indeed, some people forget their place. But before she could say more, Adrian rose from his seat. His voice carried across the hall. "If respect is measured by wealth, then none of us deserve to be here. Because without dignity, we are poor indeed." The room went silent. Harrington flushed with shame. Margaret's face stiffened. And for the second time, Adrian chose the maid's dignity over his mother's pride. The guests would not forget it. Neither would Margaret. That night, Amara sat alone in her small room, tears streaming silently. She had never wanted to be a source of conflict. Her silence was her shield. But Adrian's defense stirred memories she had tried to bury. She reached beneath her bed and pulled out an old wooden box. Inside were faded documents, a birth certificate, and photographs, evidence of a life that had been stolen from her. Amara was not who she seemed. She had once been the daughter of a wealthy businessman who mysteriously vanished, his empire stolen by deceitful partners. After her father's death, she and her mother were cast out, betrayed by those they trusted. Her mother died soon after, leaving Amara to survive alone. The Williams family name appeared on some of those documents. Adrian's father, now deceased, had once been a partner to her own father. The truth, if revealed, could shake the entire foundation of Margaret's pride. But Amara said nothing. She folded the documents back into the box and whispered to herself, "Not yet." Margaret's hatred grew. Adrian's open defense of the maid humiliated her among her peers. She began investigating Amara, determined to uncover dirt that would drive her out. Her private investigator reported little. Amara had no criminal record, no family connections, no history that explained her refinement. That only deepened Margaret's suspicion. One evening, Margaret confronted Adrian. "You are blind, son. She is using you. A girl like that has no place in this family." Adrian replied calmly, "And yet she has more grace in her silence than all the wealth in this house." Margaret's eyes narrowed. Her son was slipping from her control, and she vowed she would not lose him, not to a maid, and certainly not to whatever secrets the girl carried. A week later, the storm arrived literally and figuratively. Rain battered the mansion as lightning flashed across the sky. Margaret's investigator had finally uncovered something, Amara's true identity. He presented Margaret with documents linking her to the late businessman who had once been her husband's partner. Margaret was furious. She stormed into the dining hall, where Adrian and Amara were present. She threw the papers on the table. "She is no maid. She is the daughter of James Okoro, the man your father ruined." Gasps filled the room. Adrian stared at Amara, shock flickering across his face. Amara closed her eyes, realizing the truth was no longer hers to guard. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking years of silence. "I am his daughter. And I took this job not for revenge, but because I wanted to understand the world that destroyed my family." The storm outside thundered as the storm inside erupted. Margaret pointed at Amara with shaking hands. "You see? She's been deceiving us all along. She wants revenge." But Adrian shook his head. "No, Mother. She wanted the truth. And you gave her none. You humiliated her. You tore her dignity. Yet she stayed silent. That is not the act of an enemy. It is the strength of someone better than us." The staff, emboldened, began to nod. For years they had endured Margaret's cruelty in silence. Now they saw in Amara not just a maid, but a symbol of dignity. Margaret realized, to her horror, that she was losing control of not just her son, but the entire household. Adrian placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "From this day, you are not a servant here. You are my equal." Margaret's pride shattered. She retreated to her chamber, trembling with rage. All her life, she had built power through fear, control, and wealth. Now a maid, no, the daughter of her husband's old rival, had undone everything. She tried one last scheme, attempting to rally Adrian's business partners against him by spreading rumors about his attachment to a servant. But the plan backfired. Many of them admired Adrian's integrity after the banquet and saw in Amara a woman of quiet strength. Margaret stood isolated. Her son no longer obeyed her. The staff no longer feared her. Her wealth, though vast, could not buy back the respect she had lost. One morning, as the sun rose over Rosewood Hill, the mansion no longer felt heavy with tension. Amara walked through the halls not as a maid, but as a woman free of secrets. Adrian stood by her side, introducing her to the staff not as a servant, but as someone who would share in rebuilding the Williams legacy, not on pride, but on dignity. Margaret, watching from the balcony, felt an unfamiliar weight in her chest. She had lost, but more painfully, she realized she had never truly understood her son. Amara turned once, her calm eyes meeting Margaret's. There was no triumph in them, only quiet forgiveness. It pierced deeper than hatred ever could. The house, once silent with fear, now echoed with something new, hope. And it all began the moment a millionaire's mother ripped the quiet maid's uniform.